How we doing, everybody? This is Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert, a NASCAR and racing podcast. NASCAR would be out in San Diego, continuing the 250th celebration of the U.S., and they would pull out all the stops, as all three series would be running on a street course set up across the Naval Base Coronado. So much racing action to break it down. We have 2 episodes this week. In this one, we'll go over all the action from the Truck Series race, as they would be hitting the track first on Friday. We'll cover all the action from the Cup and O'Reilly Series side of things in the second episode. But that wasn't all the racing action last weekend. ARCA Series will be out in Berlin. Race recap for that one on this episode. Plus yellow flag, green flag, discussions with Dave, NASCAR History Time, Paint Scheme of the Week Part 2, interview with driver that just ran the truck race, Nathan Nicholson, plus so much more on this episode of Splash of Gas. As always, we're sponsored by Magical Travel with Dave, aka Disney Dave Weichert, my father. He will be able to help you with all your Disney and Universal vacation needs. He can be reached at DisneyDaveW@Verizon.net. Please make sure you follow all the Splash of Gas social medias for midweek and on-track updates. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are all Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert. Now for the Truck Series recap. Trucks would be ready to start things off at the Naval Base out in San Diego. After qualifying, Caden Honeycutt would be the fastest and on the pole. Him and Lane Riggs take the field to green. Honeycutt clears and leads with Riggs hot on his bumper. Jimmy Johnson is up to third. Third lap, Lane Riggs makes the pass on Honeycutt for the lead. First yellow flies a lap later after Dawson Sutton spins. Riggs and Honeycutt restart. Riggs gets the jump and leads again. As we see on road courses, many flip the stage, pitting just before the end of lap 1. Riggs and Honeycutt do stay out. Lane Riggs wins the first stage. Honeycutt and Jimmy Johnson restart for stage 2. Caden to the lead. Couple laps in, Honeycutt has his brakes lock up, and Jimmy Johnson leads. He pits a few laps later. Parker Kligerman then leads with Riggs right behind him. Lane makes the pass and leads. He elects to flip the stage and pits with 2 to go left in stage 2, handing the lead back to Kligerman. Parker Kligerman wins the middle stage. Chandler Smith and Honeycutt restart for the third and final stage. Honeycutt back to the lead. 20 laps to go. Caden hits a tire barrier. Chandler Smith now leading. The yellow flag flies for debris. Riggs and Ty Majeski restart with 15 laps to go. Riggs leads. 4 laps later, another yellow, this time for Jake Garcia losing power. Could someone get past Lane on the restart? Riggs and Majeski restart with just 8 laps to go. Lane again to the top spot. But a lap later, Chandler Smith passes his teammate and Riggs for the lead. Another yellow with 4 laps to go as Tyler Ankrum hits the wall. Another red flag to repair the wall. Smith and Riggs restart with just 2 laps left. They don't even make it a lap though. Ben Rhodes and several others get collected, putting the race into overtime. Smith and Honeycutt restart. The 2 make contact, sending Smith spinning. But he gets going and the race stays green. And now Daniel Hemrick leads with Lane Riggs right on his bumper. Now Tyler Reif and Hemrick battle door to door for the lead. 1 to go. Reif leads. Closing turns. Reif misses a tire barrier, taking a penalty. Lane Riggs to the lead on the final lap, and he wins out in San Diego. An extremely exciting finish. A little bit longer than some would like for a Truck Series race, but hey, that's going to a road course or street course for the first time. Congratulations to Lane Riggs. Now for trivia question time. This episode's question is, you might know this one if you are a military historian or were watching the broadcast this weekend. What year did Naval Base Coronado open in? Answer coming at the end. Now for the ARCA Series recap from Berlin Raceway. After qualifying, New Jersey native Thomas Annunziata is the fastest and wins the pole. He is followed by Berlin track local Tyler Lupton. They bring the field to green. Annunziata leads early, but is passed by Max Reeves on lap 16. Several yellows fly in the first half of the race. Max Reeves is able to prevail and leads. Annunziata and Reeves again restart with just 63 laps to go. Reeves gets the jump, but a lap later, Thomas makes the pass on him. Could Annunziata keep it there? No, he could not. Within 50 laps to go, Reeves retakes the top spot. Final restart occurs with just 35 to go. Reeves again motoring through like he's done all night on the restarts. Race stays green and is won by Max Reeves. Now for yellow flag, green flag. Green flag, ARCA. P4 finish for Taylor Reimer at Berlin. Exciting weekend for her. And then, of course, her boyfriend. More on that on the second episode. Yellow flag, trucks. Unfortunately, giving it to the series. They go first and are kind of the guinea pigs. A lot of drivers have to go to backup trucks. And they still kept wrecking throughout the race. Green flag trucks, Nice Motorsports showing out on Friday. I know Reif let one slip away at the end, but his teammate Landon Lewis finishes strong. Strong showing for that group. Quick look back at the predictions. 2 winners, ARCA picked Max Reeves. He gets it done. Trucks, same thing. Lane Riggs, he makes it happen. Now for Discussions with Dave, Part 1. Truck Series thoughts, starting with the practice and qualifying. In all honesty, I do my best week in, week out when the trucks, Xfinity are racing and to watch the practice and qualifying. And sometimes, the end of the day and the week, it can be a little busier, right? I tuned in to that truck practice and qualifying. It was probably the most entertaining one of the year. There were a fair amount of crashes in the practice and qualifying. As just mentioned in the recap, a lot of guys having to go to backup cars. And that's what made it really so exciting. And yes, the whole scenery on the naval base made it, 10 out of 10, right? But just that unknown and where guys could and could not push the limits of the road course setup there was really interesting and was great to see how that came upon throughout the weekend. Initial thoughts on San Diego, starting with the layout, just so scenic and beautiful, awesome, and so patriotic for NASCAR to be racing on a naval installation like the one in Coronado. So awesome to have the aircraft carrier, a number of other ships and fighter pilots and helicopters and whatnot along the track. And also, you'll hear us getting into more detail with our driver interviews from this week, the guys that were racing in San Diego, but there were several different surfaces, like types, asphalt, concrete, that made up this road course. So really neat how tire wear and different surfaces came into play. That was really my initial thoughts, and obviously, as the racing went on the weekend, some pros and cons of San Diego came into spotlight, but all in all, it was some great racing. Getting into some of the pins and needles of the Truck Series race, as mentioned, it was like a hornet's nest out there in the middle of the pack. And post-race, some of the tempers poured over, which can happen, that's racing, and 2 veterans. I'm not too familiar with Adam Andretti besides the last name, and he was been running a couple of Truck Series race. More familiar with some of the other Andrettis and some of the younger ones like Marco too. But Parker Kligerman, another veteran, these 2 guys, are bumping, banging. Parker, unfortunately, as we were mentioning, towards the front of that one, he does get, taken out with the front of Andretti's bumper. And these 2 guys, nothing physical, but on pit road, it was pretty entertaining. And Parker is, typical self if you've seen Parker, and he is trying to be precise, and he's obviously part of the CW broadcast for the O'Reilly series. He's a full-time driver, now he's in the booth, so he's trying to explain to Adam Andretti, and Adam Andretti did not want a single part of it. He told Kligerman, hey, you have your head up your ass, and it was pretty funny. Parker obviously was showing Andretti, like, hey, this is what I think happened with his hands, and Andretti pretty much mocks him, was entertaining. Parker took it like a champ, said, hey, I've lost all respect for you, and so on. A pretty good post-race interview or conflict to watch if you have some time. Last topic in part 1, but that's Lane Van Rigsbergen. Yep, you heard me right. Lane Riggs has won the 2 street courses in the Truck Series, St. Pete and San Diego. Both new courses for NASCAR and for the Truck Series. And guess what? Lane wins both. Lane gets out of the car. That's the first thing he says is, hey, Lane Van Rigsbergen here, and, gives flowers to Shane right after. I thought it was pretty hysterical. Post-race, Riggs went into more detail, saying he thought of that with some of his friends after St. Pete and wanted to wait until another road course or street course win to use that. I like it. He's top of the point standings right now, so he can say that. How many more road course races can Riggs win the rest of this year? Truck Series doesn't have to wait for that long. Next race for them in 2 weeks is at Lime Rock Park. Was there at that road course last year myself out in Connecticut. Can Riggs get it done this year? We'll find out. Paint scheme of the week, part 1. He came up just short, was leading at the end, but you gotta give it to Tyler Reif's paint scheme. Camo, tough to see on the track, but nonetheless, joking, but just an awesome, patriotic, Army-themed paint scheme, and I believe Al Neese, the owner of Neese Motorsports, he was a veteran in Vietnam, and the paint scheme was owed to one of his comrades out there, so really cool to share that with the trucks racing on the Naval Base. Is a really cool paint scheme. Check out my recent stories for that. Now for NASCAR history time. Really history time this week, because we're going to go over Naval Air Station North Island, the birthplace of naval aviation. Naval Air Station North Island has a deep-rooted place in both history and aviation history. Officially commissioned in 1917 as Naval Air Station San Diego, it was later recognized in '63 by the House Armed Service Committee as the birthplace of naval aviation. Aviation activity on the island actually dates back even earlier than that, going back to 1911. Theodore G. Ellison, the Navy's first aviator, trained there alongside fellow pioneers. This just came 8 years after Orville and Wilbur Wright achieved the first powered flight. At that time, North Island was a little more than a sand flat, previously used for recreation by guests of the nearby Hotel del Coronado. The site quickly became a hub for groundbreaking aviation milestones. It saw the first seaplane flight in 1911, as well as the first mid-air refueling and non-stop transcontinental flight in 1923. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh began the early leg of his historic New York to Paris journey from North Island's Rockwell Field. North Island's geography also shaped its identity. Once separated from Coronado by a shallow waterway known as the Spanish Bight, it also earned its name as the North Coronado Island before the area was filled in during World War II. The base also played a role in early aerial demonstrations with Navy squadrons like the Seahawks thrilling crowds as early as the late 1920s, laying the groundwork for today's famed Blue Angels. Wanted to share some naval history with NASCAR being at the Navy Base Coronado. Hope you all enjoyed that. Now for an interview with Nathan Nicholson, who was driving the 76 truck out in the Truck Series race there. Here's what Nathan had to say. Next guest we bring on the Splash of Gas was just running the lefts and rights on the street course at the Naval Base Coronado in the Truck Series is Nathan Nicholson. Thanks for joining the show, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Before we get into the recent action, you're from Bloomington, Indiana, started racing karts at a young age. How was growing up racing for you as a kid?
Yeah, growing up racing was always super fun. Being pretty close to Indianapolis was always exciting, with some of the IndyCar drivers coming to run and a lot of, kids that were interested and really all about it. So, one of the tracks up there, Newcastle and Whiteland, were always super competitive and, cool environments to grow up around with me and my dad kind of running and, just doing it together. I think a lot of people have a similar story as the early ages and kind of got into the national karting scene pretty late and only did that for a couple years before going and running some of the Mazda stuff again, with me and my dad. So it's been a family affair and, racing as a younger kid was always really fun with my dad. So it's good memories to look back on.
Got it. Racing with the family is definitely fun for sure. And you just mentioned the Mazda stuff. You've been running the spec Mazda's MX-5 series for a number of years, being the national points champion in 2023. How has that series been for your development as a driver?
Yeah, I mean, that racing is so competitive. And, those cars, you really have to be on top of them and wheel them with little horsepower and not a lot of tires. So, I think it's helped a lot. And like one of the things that I always talk to people about is learning the process of how to be fast, right? If you can learn the process of how to approach each problem, I feel like you can, learn how to run in almost any series. So that's kind of what I've applied while transitioning to quite a big jump from the MX-5 Cup to the NASCAR trucks.
Thank you for breaking that down. Really interesting to see how you break down races and see things on that side of things. Getting into the action, the Mazda action from this year. You start off the season in Daytona, then St. Pete, most recently at Mid-Ohio a few weeks back, P18 in the first race in that one, and P7th in the second one. How was your weekend at Mid-Ohio, would you say?
Yeah, it was up and down. It was a little rough with some car issues. So, it's the series there is always interesting with the young kids rising up through the ranks too. So, we weren't we didn't unload very fast. So we were kind of working on the car the whole way through to be competitive. And obviously the progress from race 1 to race 2 shows that. And, I'm excited to get back after it this upcoming race at CTMP, which is always a blast to run.
Got it. Appreciate you touching upon that. And with the Mazda stuff, there's typically those weekends there's two races at the same track. That's not typical in the NASCAR side of things. Is there any different mindset or kind of game plan change from race 1 to race 2 depending on how things go?
Yeah, you get a lot of opportunities to make changes, right? So what was wrong in race 1, you get an opportunity to fix, where in the NASCAR stuff, you don't really get another opportunity until later in the year or even the following year. So, race 1, you try to push, but you got to remember you have a second race to keep the car intact for. And you're always trying to learn and develop the equipment and chase the track conditions and all of that as well.
Got it. Thank you for breaking that down. Just a little bit different than the typical NASCAR stuff that we're talking about on here.
Yeah.
Was announced at the beginning of this year you run the first 3 road courses of the 2026 truck season for Freedom Racing Enterprises. That Chevy is typically driven by owner of that team, Spencer Boyd. How did that deal come up, and what's it been like working with those guys?
Yeah, so the idea of trying to do some of the stock car stuff actually came from some of the people at the Whelen Motorsports division, and I can't thank them enough for their support and pushing me to do this. And I wasn't sure about it at first, just, as far as kind of switching career paths on what I've been successful in. And it's been such a fun opportunity. So, we got hooked up with Spencer, and it kind of instantly clicked. We're both, come from similar backgrounds, ran a lot of the same karting tracks and stuff when we were younger. So, and he's been such a great mentor and leader on that program for everyone involved on learning, that next level of competition of that NASCAR is for me, and what it takes to succeed. So it's been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you for breaking that down. Spencer, obviously has been the victory lane in the trucks before and has a lot of experience, just like you said. That's really good that you can learn a lot from him. And I know you mentioned the sponsor Wheelin'. I didn't realize that, until the race in San Diego of that partnership, of the magnitude of that. How has that been working with everyone over there?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, obviously Wheelin's a pretty historic name. They won the Xfinity Championship last year, and the two cars been pretty successful in the past, and Jesse's been a pretty cool to work with as well. So it's really just an honor to be a part of that program and to have all of their support and having them believe in me. And sometimes that's what you need, to believe in yourself and push yourself to your limits, right? Is surrounding yourself with people like that. And that's something that I can't thank them enough for.
That's great that you have them in your corner and can lean on Jesse. I've had him on the show multiple times in the past, and always great to pick his mind as well. Getting into the NASCAR side of things on the trucks, as we saw in St. Pete, the street course earlier in the year, and then of course last weekend, we know those can be wild. No, St. Pete didn't end the way you wanted. What was it like making your Truck Series debut in South Florida earlier this year?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit challenging, obviously, because of it being a street course, but at least it's a street course that I had experience at, and honestly, I feel like that gave me an upper hand compared to some of those guys. And we kind of struggled with some issues and some overheating, so we had to go to the back a couple times, excuse me, and it was a challenging race, but I feel like for me it was a really good opportunity to show off my pace, and I really wish we got a practice session. We ended up, our practice session got rained out, and that was my first time driving a truck, so I was kind of learning the entire way through the race and building confidence. I feel like that practice session might have made the difference as far as that goes, and maybe we would have had a better result. So pretty challenging as no practice hopping into my first race, but super grateful for the opportunity. That race was awesome and historic in its own right as the truck's first street course, and obviously Coronado being extremely historic as well was super cool.
Of course, some great street course races that you've been running. Appreciate you breaking down St. Pete. The following race that you run is Watkins Glen. You mentioned just gaining confidence. You finished P20, run all the laps there, finished on the lead lap. Did you gain confidence after running there in New York?
Yeah, going through the emotions of green flag pit stops and some of those other things that we didn't have at St. Pete. A practice, a qualifying was good. In many ways, it wasn't my first race because I'd driven the truck before, but in many ways it was, a first. So, like I said, with the live pit stops and stuff. So yeah, it was definitely we checked a lot of boxes on that one. As we finished the race, we showed some decent pace and stayed clean until the end, right? So that's always the name of the game.
Gotcha. Appreciate you going over that one, especially with the live pit stops there. Getting into this past weekend, obviously, just like you said, a lot of first time NASCAR would be running on the naval base or any military installation. Before we get into the on-track action, what was like the experience for you being on the naval base there?
Yeah, I mean the Navy was super welcoming and made it as easy as I think running on an active military base could be for us. So, I'm super thankful for them and all of their service as well, and just the cool factor as well, right? Like having some of those jets around and that awesome aircraft carrier on the water, and there's some other ones that were harder to see, but there's another naval ship that was right next to it, and it was just an awesome experience. That's probably the coolest event I've done, and the track was actually really fun as well.
Awesome. Yeah, from the TV coverage, definitely looked really awesome. So a lot of guys hit the wall in practice. Your P20 in qualifying, track layout at 16 turns. From the track walk into the practice and qualifying, what did you learn about the track and the truck?
Yeah, so the truck felt a lot better. It felt some more similar to St. Pete, obviously, with it being a road course or street course as well. The track walk was it was shocking to see how big some of the bumps were. And in the truck in the practice, I'd say like from the sim that I ran and visually, the little bumps were not as bad as I expected them to be. But the big bumps were intense, right? Like going over the bump on the back straight, and you could see all the cars getting, four tires off the ground coming into to turn two there was pretty awesome. It was a ton of fun. So that was a super cool experience, and getting the two practice sessions too, I feel like made a big difference for us. I was able to have a little more confidence in qualifying and know how I need to push the truck. And we made a couple setup adjustments to make it drive more like how I wanted to, which was the first opportunity we'd had because St. Pete, we got rained out, and then Watkins, it was raining during our practice. So I feel like that made a big difference to our result and our pace throughout the race.
Those practice sessions, as just where you were alluding to, definitely big, especially for the younger drivers out there. Once the green flag drops, it seemed like a hornet's nest out there in the middle of the pack. Towards the end of stage two, many flip the stage. You lead briefly before you get passed by the 34, P24 in stage one, P11 in stage two. How are you feeling going into stage three?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was no reason for us not to be pretty confident towards the end of the race. I had contact pretty early on, which, set us on a different tire strategy than probably what we would have liked. But it ended up giving us a really good opportunity at showing something in that race. So, for a little bit there, I was running up in the top five. Which was, awesome, great experience, great exposure, and like you said, 11th in that stage, and, felt like I really was doing my job, saving my tires, keeping my equipment good, and running good laps. So, going into stage three, I was really looking forward to doing more of that, and, being competitive with those guys that I feel like I have the pace to run with.
Got it. You mentioned being up towards the front. What was it like racing towards the front in stage three? I mean, unfortunately, get caught up in that wreck there. And then what did you see there before the wreck? Unfortunately.
Yeah, so obviously running up at the front was really cool. I've been watching the Truck Series all year and before that as well. So seeing those trucks that I've watched and running wheel to wheel with them was awesome. Also to have the 76 so far up the field was great to give all the guys that satisfaction that they deserve. And it's a lot more one-on-one racing, right? The pack kind of spreads out, and you get to pick a battle at a time. Where once you kind of get back to 10th place or so, you have 3 or 4 guys in a battle at once, and it very easily gets messy. So, and then towards the end of the race there, kind of the same thing like I was talking about. Got just tagged on the back end of a wreck that was happening in turn 2, and sadly that put me into the wall and ended our day, which sucked because I feel like on that restart we were going to be around 7th and probably could have brought it home there on the last 2 laps, but That's how these races go. Towards the end, there's a lot of desperation and aggressive moves going, and that's how it rolls, right? It's NASCAR.
Yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, unfortunately. And just as you mentioned, as a big fan of the truck series, really neat and cool to see the 76 running up front. There's the two short stage 1 and stage 2, and then into stage 3. In regards to the tire wear specifically, did you experience any of that?
Yeah, so I had contact pretty early in the race, like I was mentioning, and we had to come in for one of our sets of tires. So I had to make those stretch all the way through to stage 3, and that was the only way we were going to be able to stay on the same tire strategy as everyone else. So there was a lot of saving at that point, and something I really haven't done in my career. With the sprint racing format of the Mazda stuff, it's not needed. So, that was definitely different, and felt like I did pretty good at it and kept us in contention where everyone else was flipping the stage and coming in, and got us back to where we needed to be. And then in the third stage, there was a little bit of tire wear, but I feel like a lot of people were on the same kind of program, same strategy. There's a couple guys that hit just after that stage that were coming through the field, but once 5 laps or so difference didn't feel to make like a world's difference. It was a little bit of a difference, but once you got to that like lap 10 area is when you really started to feel it. And it wasn't so much that you were losing pace, but it definitely was on edge more, and it felt like the side-by-sides were way harder, right? When you're trying to get pointed and get on power to roll the outside of someone or go late on the brakes to get into someone, that's when it really became pretty challenging.
Got it. I really appreciate you breaking that down and those specifics there. As we saw from the broadcast, there was courting after a small number of laps, as you were just saying. You did mention of course from the Mazdas to the trucks, there's obviously big differences with the pit crews, the tires and such, and the horsepower. What are some things that you're able to of course there's different driver craft, but what do you specifically take from the Mazdas into the trucks, and like where is that kind of blend and similarity do you find?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like a lot of it, like I was kind of saying, is like the process that you go about, right? Always trying to be critical of yourself and improving to be the best driver that you can. And that's what I'm there for, right? I go out every single time wanting to improve and give the guys that make it possible the result they deserve. So that process of being self-critical and that's definitely something I translate. A lot of the stuff with the braking is pretty different because of how stiff the truck is. It has really big tires and some downforce as well, which the Mazdas definitely don't. And then, the whole using the brake pedal to try to turn the car and balancing it is very similar to what I do in the Mazdas, like that mid-corner rotation. So there's some stuff, but besides that, it's a pretty different beast.
Got it. Thank you for going down the differences with the braking. Very interesting. Yeah. And really hope to see it in a truck, back in a truck very soon. Last question, getting more on towards the Mazda side again. You have CTMP, VIR, NDGP, and Road Atlanta making up the 8 final races of the season. Besides race wins, what are your goals for the rest of the Mazda season?
Yeah, obviously it was a little bit of a rough start. I think the goal is to try to put ourselves in championship contention again. I think, we led the championship for the most races out of anyone last year just from our consistency. And, Daytona was a little rough, but we're starting to find that form again and consistency. And we just got to keep doing what we do. And, I think we're only 200 points out of second place right now, which in that series is not a lot. So, I'm really excited to get back at it and continue to prove myself.
Awesome. We'll be following along in that for the rest of that season. And just like I said, really hope we see you back in the truck soon. And thanks so much for the time again, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you so much. More than happy to.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, see ya.
Amazing insight from Nathan. Really appreciated how he broke down the tire wear and the braking, then the braking comparison from the trucks to the Mazdas. Really interesting as a race fan. Now for discussions with Dave, part 2. Jimmy Johnson running up front was super cool. I'm a 90s kid, 1997, so when I was growing up, getting into NASCAR, Jimmy Johnson was winning a lot of championships and a lot of races. And, towards the end of his career, kind of learned to like him a little bit more when he, comes back down to earth, winning a little bit less races compared percentage-wise to the beginning and middle of his career, right? It was really cool to see Jimmy lead some laps there at Sonoma. He's from California. I believe it's 19 or 20 miles outside of San Diego. So that was really a home race for Jimmy. Seemed like he had a lot of fans and a whole lot of supporters out there. Really neat to see him run up front. No, he does say that 2027 Daytona 500 will be his last time in the NASCAR seat. I really hope we see Jimmy in a couple more truck races before the year ends. It was really exciting. As mentioned, for the Truck Series, they do have 2 off weeks, but the next race that they're running is another road course. Really neat to see Cup and Xfinity O'Reilly have the back-to-back road courses on back-to-back weekends, right? San Diego, then Sonoma. Truck Series, they're off a couple weeks, as we mentioned, but then they're running out in Lime Rock in Connecticut. I was at that track last year, and that was the first time I've ever witnessed a road course in person, and it was really cool. The passing zones weren't really the biggest, so a lot of emphasis was on that restart and that first right-hand turn into some S's. We saw Corey Heim dominate that one, lead from green to checkered. Of course, there's going to be some road course ringers in this one, but like we've seen throughout this year, Lime Rock is going to become a dogfight, I think, between Honeycutt and Lane Riggs. Does it come down to a late race restart? I sure hope so. Should be some great racing out in the mountains of Connecticut. Final topic on DWD for this one. We've been talking about Jesse Love replacing Josh Berry for the Cup Series in Wood Brothers under 21 car, but we haven't talked about who's going to replace Jesse Love in the 2 O'Reilly car. That car is sure going to be sought after with the speed and consistency that they have showed not only this year. Yes, they haven't won a race yet, but they won the championship last year and typically are a strong car year in, year out. And yes, of course, there's going to be other names thrown throughout the silly season and as we run out 2026. One of the drivers that is on an RCR development contract right now is Carson Brown. We've seen Carson have strong runs in the super late model and, of course, winning an ARCA race earlier this year. Right now, he's my pick to be driving the number 2 for next year, and that's going to be a race-winning car. We saw Jesse Love win poles early in his rookie career with RCR at the Xfinity level. So whoever's going to get in that car is going to be gifted a really fast bullet. And that wraps up discussions with Dave for this episode. And now the drivers to look out for the ARCA Series race from Elko this upcoming weekend. We start off with the guy from across the pond and the other way from Japan. Takuma Koga will be in the 12. Max Reeves, he's in all honesty one of the favorites after his multiple wins already this year. Jake Bowman, that Nitro car, number 20, is going to be quick. Ty Fredrickson, good to see him back. He'll be in the 25. PRG car, 28, Landon Huffman. Really cool to see him run the 28. Seems like they'll have a cool paint scheme on that one too. Isabella Robusto, that 55 Nitro car, has been quick. Thomas Annunziata on the pole last weekend. Can he break through and possibly get a race win? Taylor Reimer's been showing out in that 77 car recently. Then Bobby Dale Earnhardt, last but not least. Can't forget about Bobby Dale. Brings us to the end of this episode, and that means time for trivia answer time. This episode's question is, you might know this one if you are a military historian or were watching the broadcast this past weekend. What year did the Naval Base Coronado open in? Answer is two parts technically. 1997, Naval Base Coronado was created, incorporating 8 separate naval installations under one commanding officer. Naval Air Station North Island, known as NAS North Island, is a U.S. Navy installation located at the north end of the Coronado Peninsula on San Diego Bay in San Diego, California. It is part of Naval Base Coronado, the largest aerospace industrial complex in the U.S., and was built in 1917. As always, we're sponsored by Magical Travel with Dave, aka Disney Dave Weichert, my father. He will be able to help you with all your Disney and Universal vacation needs. He can be reached at DisneyDaveW@Verizon.net. Please make sure you follow all the Splash of Gas social medias for midweek and on-track updates. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are all Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert. More content coming out this week, folks. Please tune in for part 2 of our San Diego recap. That one also has a full-length interview with O'Reilly Series driver Sheldon Creed. He had a lot to share. Splash of Gas out.